Hi, I'm Sky from Sunny Girl Cakes. In this video, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. So in this video, I'm going to show you a few things that I've learned along the way to make your cake decorating life easier. You're not going to find these things in cookbooks. So firstly, what I'm going to do is show you how to finish your cake so that it looks perfect for presentation. So simple things like adding a ribbon to the base of the silver board here. There's nothing worse than seeing a beautiful wedding cake but with a silver board hanging out at the bottom. So I'll show you how I do that. So what I use is a double-sided tape. And I'm going to stick it to the board. Press it on hard. I'll just make sure that I press it on hard so that it is stuck. Back to the start again. And we're going to chop it off. Now I'm going to separate the tape. Okay, so the tape stays on the board and we peel this top layer off. So now we have a sticky surface to put our ribbon on. So the next thing you want to do is make sure you know where the back of the cake is, because we don't want the ribbon join to be at the front of the cake. So we're using this as the front of the cake here. So the back of the cake's going to be around here. So I grab my ribbon and working from the back, I press it on and then pressing firmly again on the tape, sticking it on, making sure that I'm covering all that silver board. Now you can use a different coloured ribbon depending on what your cake looks like. Sometimes it's lovely if you've got a black and white cake and you've got a white board to use a black ribbon, because it just adds a really wow factor to the base. And then back around to the back, and then I'm just going to finish that off there. So you can see that looks so much better with a finished base. Next, I'm going to add a ribbon to my top tier. So I've decided to go with navy blue, something different. I've chosen a ribbon that's thick enough to come up over that bottom of that gold leaf. I'm going to work out how much I need by running it around, carefully making sure I'm not breaking off any of my ruffles. And again, working out where the back is. So the back's back here. I'm going to cut off any excess. And I'm again going to use the double-sided tape. A little bit on here and a bit on my ribbon. Press it down firm. Peeling the backing off. I'm going to start here. You don't want to move your ribbon too much because you don't want to destroy any of your gold leaf. And then I'm going to make sure it's flush all the way around. Pulling it tight, and then I'm going to finish it at the back here. Take another piece of double-sided tape. This time I want the tape to touch the cake on this side and then overlap the ribbon on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to cut this here and then just double check that it's all in place at the front before I secure it down. And secure that down at the back. Now you're hoping that this is still somewhere around the back, which I think we've done okay with that. Right, next I'm going to, just for looks, add a thin white bow. So I'm going to tie the bow at the front this time. So I measure out how much I need, cut that bit off, make sure that it's sitting flush all the way around, and again being very careful not to knock off any of my ruffles. I'm going to tie the little bow. I need to make sure I'm right at the front. Okay, I could spend 30 minutes on a bow sometimes. And then work out how long I want my little dangly bits. So I kind of want them to be a bit smaller. I do love a little bow. And then I'm going to cut these off just to dangle sweetly over the side of the cake. So when I cut the ribbon, I'm cutting it off on an angle, which will help to stop it from fraying, and it also looks pretty. We've added a touch of prettiness with the little white bow. I like to let my cakes cool in the tin. That way I know they're going to hold their shape. If you were to try to pull the cake out of the tin when it was still hot, chances are that it might fall apart and go out of shape. I prefer to bake my cakes in layers. So what I've got here is 2 cakes that will be put together to make one tier, like this top cake over here. So the reason I like to do this is, one, because they bake quicker that way, which is simpler. Also because then I can sandwich them together with a layer of ganache in between. I also do it because I like to create height. I like to ensure that my cakes are about 4 inches high, and this way I can bake at least 2-inch high cakes in each tin. So I've got my 2 cakes and I want to trim them so that they're even in height. We're not sure how this is going to go because the cake could be a little bit hot on the inside still. So you can use a long serrated knife to do this, but I use what's called an agbe. This is a fabulous tool. It did cost me a little bit of money, but it's worth every cent. You buy it online from Agbe. So what I do here is I set the height that I'd like my cake to be, which is at about 2 inches. I'll bring it over to my cake. And I set the height, tighten up the sides, and then, being very careful of this sharp blade, I'm just going to run the knife through the cake. Take that away, and then I'm going to lift off the top. And as you can see, I've got a beautiful smooth finish and a delicious cake. That's good. Another thing I want to talk about is photographing your cake. There's nothing worse than seeing a beautifully finished cake that someone spent hours and hours working on, photographed in front of a heap of awful looking messy crap. It's really important to think about where you're photographing your cake. It can be as simple as just holding up a white cake box behind your cake, and you're eliminating all that mess and you're getting a much better finish. I would recommend you use a Masonite board for your base board. A cardboard cake board would not be strong enough to hold a tiered cake. I also use Masonite boards at the base of both my cakes. I feel they're much more sturdy, they're easier for ganaching against. They are reusable, although I don't reuse them. I factor the cost of them into my cakes, and therefore the client doesn't need to return them to me. Lots of people have asked me what kind of icing I use. I prefer Bakel's ready to roll icing. It's sometimes referred to as sugar paste, other times fondant. Sometimes it's just called RTR icing, which means ready to roll. I prefer Bakel's because of the flavour. It's a subtle sweet flavour, and I think it works really well combined with my ganache and my mud cake. When you're working with icing, I prefer to work in an air-conditioned environment. It's much easier to roll out your icing. Here in Queensland, we have a high humidity. Humidity and icing do not mix, so I definitely work with the air conditioner. The one thing I don't do with my finished cakes is put them in the fridge. This can cause them to sweat and for things like ruffles and flowers to droop. So in my earlier video, I showed you how to apply gold leaf to a cake. I just want to talk about when you're purchasing your leaf. Both silver and gold can be purchased as either a transfer or a loose leaf. So what I have here and what I used when I applied it to my cake is a transfer sheet. So you can see it's actually stuck to the tissue paper. If you buy it as a loose leaf, you'll get a loose sheet of gold or silver leaf sitting between two pieces of tissue paper. If you were to pick up a loose leaf, it would just fall straight off onto the bench. It is much harder to work with. So I recommend when you're purchasing your gold and silver leaf that you ensure that you're buying a transfer sheet and not a loose leaf sheet. When I'm baking my cakes, I like to use a chocolate with a high percentage of cocoa. Just like this lint that I used in my recipe earlier, it has about a 50% cocoa. When I make my ganache, I don't use something quite so rich. I use a chocolate that has more like a 15% cocoa. I find that works better. As you've seen in my videos, I prefer to dust the bench with corn flour. I find that corn flour works much better than icing sugar. Icing sugar can lead to becoming sticky, and then you'll find it will end up sticking to the bench rather than being dry and lovely and easy to move around. Being a qualified chef, I understand the importance of working from a registered kitchen. So if you're wanting to sell your cakes, it is important that you're working from a licensed registered kitchen. So you need to check with your local council for the requirements that you need in your area. I was required to have a separate commercial kitchen from my residential kitchen. Like I said, it can be different in your area, so just check with your local council. So that's it for my tips and tricks. I hope that these tips will give you the professional edge that you've been looking for to create amazing cakes. For photos of my beautiful designs, please check me out on Instagram at Sunnygirl Cakes and also on Facebook.